It's Rick with Rock Bottom Outreach, and it's Real Talk Monday. Happy Labor Day to you. Certainly don't want to miss doing the Real Talk, especially this one. Been doing an assignment in school, and the study has been out of the book of Genesis, talking about Abraham and Isaac. And if you're not that familiar with the Bible, let me try to explain. Abraham was a guy that was old, and I mean old. And he had an emptiness in his heart because he did not have a child of his own. And so God promised him that he would have a child of his own, and that child being Isaac. And, you know, Abraham was called by God to be a servant. And he was a very faithful servant. And he knew and he believed God when God promised him a son. But the deal is, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, like, it took a very, very long time for this to happen. And if you want to read about it a little bit, you can go to the book of Genesis and starting even in like chapter 12, and it's the call of Abram. And the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household, and I will show you. I will make you into a great nation." And so God promised all these things to Abram, and his wife was Sarah. And again, he remained obedient, and to the point that he eventually had Isaac, which is his son. But then God told him to sacrifice his son. And again, Abraham was willing to do this, to be obedient to God. And so he took Isaac up to the mountaintop, and he was going to sacrifice him. And then God stopped him and said, "Do not touch that child." Here's my point in saying this. A lot of times, we do not recognize, or we want to believe God's going to bless us in the way that he says he's going to. And so a lot of times we miss it because it doesn't look exactly the way we want it to. And I speak of this firsthand, and to say that I know in my own life, you know, God had blessed me with something, and because it did not look like it the way I wanted it to look, I basically told God to say that I was going to be, I didn't care what he said, I was going to do it anyway, and I did. And I was disobedient to the point to say, "God, may your will be done in my life, but I'm doing this either way." And that's exactly what I did. And there's a consequence because of it. And the reason I tell you this is because a lot of times we're not patient enough for God to fulfill that promise in our life. And what do? We take matters in our own hands. And what happens? We suffer a consequence because of it. And actually, Abraham took matters in his own hands to a point. But God forgave him. God still was able to utilize him, and then God fulfilled his promise. But it doesn't always happen in our timing. It happens in God's timing. Here's why I'm telling you this, man, that God is true to his promises. He really is. But it's not always in our time. And a lot of times we become discouraged, though God has already blessed us, or he's blessing us, but because it doesn't look the way we want it to, we become discouraged. Exactly the way that I did. And so what happens? Take matters into my own hands. And there's a consequence to it. I don't know what it is you're believing, you're praying for in your life right now, that you're becoming impatient because you think God doesn't care or God's not going to fulfill those promises. But God is true to his word. And God honors obedience. Not being completely obedient to God is the same thing as being completely disobedient to God. So what is it you're believing God to do in your life? What is it maybe that you're missing? Because I'll warn you, don't take matters in your own hands, because that will come back to haunt you. I promise you. It's Rick with Rock Bottom Outreach. It's been Real Talk Monday. Have a great day.